meets world. Boy meets world. When this boy meets world.
What up, bros?
What up, bros?
And welcome to Bruh Meets World.
World.
Your boy meets world. Fun guys. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I don't even know what episode we on. I feel like I'm so lost on my numbers. Y'all have to tell me. TC can probably tell y'all. I don't know where we're at. But I do know I'm Ceej.
I know that I'm Tony Curtis. You know, Ceej, I sense that you're feeling a little scatterbrained. Would you be happy to know that tomorrow marks 700 days that I have been working remote, probably the same as everyone else. I'm counting from March 13th, 2020.
Oh my God.
But yeah, tomorrow, February 11th will be 700 days. So yeah, we're all feeling a little scatterbrained, bro.
Wow. I will say a little bit of a read for you to call me scatterbrained, but at the exact same time, you just gave an explanation and I'm gonna lean in.
Yeah, it's not us, it's the system.
How are ya doing?
Doing good. I am excited to talk about this episode with you. For the listeners at home who want to hang out to the end of this episode, we got into a wild conversation about the movie Moonfall that we're going to throw at the end of this for those who want to listen, because we just went on a tangent and it just went on for like 15 minutes. And for those who want to listen, just stick around.
Yeah, I will say this. You'll probably have a better time listening to this conversation than you will Moonfall. So you guys, we love to give you extra content. Let us know what you think. Are you ready to talk about this episode?
Yeah. Let's talk about it. I'll just jump into the tell us about it, right?
Tell me about it.
Tell us about it. Yeah, Cory's a selfish bitch. Can't be happy for no one, ain't that rich. Probably why his friends want to make a switch.
I like it. You put thought into it. It rhymed. It had coherency. Yes, here for it. You know what? I think we've said this before. You guys, if you have your own tell me about it, please send them over, because we know that this is your favorite part. So we will give you credit, but yeah, you got tell me about it. You guys know what we're doing. We're almost done with season 5, but let's do like season 6. Let's get some like user tell me about it. I
would love it.
Okay. This is season 5, episode 23. Things change. Cory is distressed when he realizes that his entire world is changing around him. Shawn considers not going to college. Topanga considers going to Yale. Chubby's is reformed as Pegleg Pete, and Mr. Feeney intends to retire and move to Wyoming. The anxiously awaited college acceptance letters have finally arrived, but Cory, who expects his long-term friends will want to continue as classmate, finds that everything cannot always go according to his plan. I'm so glad in your tell me about it that you were like, oh, so Cory's a selfish bitch, because this episode could have been called the Caudacity. Because
Caudacity!
How dare he? I was just like,
oh my God, at every turn, bro, every turn, he was shitty. And the whole episode was just people going out of their way to tell him, hey, bro, you're being shitty.
Yeah, I will say this brings us back to like one of the reasons Boy Meets World. I was like, oh, Boy learns that world doesn't revolve around him is kind of like the thesis. And this episode really leaned into that, because Cory is unforgivable in moments. There are just so many things that he does and says that I was like, how is he not a villain in this story? I mean, well, he is, but how are we supposed to not see him as a villain? Because this is atrocious behavior.
He's unredeemable as a friend. He's unredeemable as a really as a boyfriend. To think that this guy was just begging Topanga to be a part of his life, and he treats her this way. Whoo! I know.
It goes to say, this is perfectly said, because what it goes to say is Cory, very, as we were talking about, is selfish. He didn't want Topanga to be with him because he and Topanga work. It's because he saw him and Topanga together. And now that he has her, he's like, all right, that part of my life is settled. Now moving on to the other things that I have planned. Like, that's why we don't really see him and Topanga go on any dates or really have any fun, because he's like, oh yeah, no, I'm creating a TV show, so to speak. The world is about me, and I have my plans, and it doesn't really matter what other people are doing. I don't need to maintain anything. I don't need to actually reciprocate emotions or intimacy. I just need to make sure that the life that I have planned for myself goes according to that plan.
I wrote that Cory's life is ruined by everyone else being their own main characters.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh my God. See, again, we're doing that thing where we project, but I would have loved, this is like, if this was a modern TV show, we would get like one episode a season that was centered around someone like Topanga Meets World or Shawn Meets World. Or, like we would get like one episode every so often that gave us the viewpoint from everyone else. Like, that's one of the things I really love about Scrubs, is they do that every once in a while. They will give you one episode that literally takes another main character and see how they interact. And very often it's them commenting on the fact that the other the usual main character thinks everything's about him. And I was like, yeah, this is what I want. Also, to that note, I will say, for some reason, don't ask me why, maybe because it's Black History Month, I'm really upset that Angela is not in the opening credits. Like, we probably had this discussion, but I watched them and I was like, no, but why is she not in the opening credits? This is before I even knew she was in the opening scene. I was like, Jack's there. I want a reason.
Angela has not been in the opening credits for all of season 5. She does appear in season 6, but what's so shitty about when she appears in season 6 is that she appears alongside Rachel, who has had no, presence in the show at all. So for the fact that she's just thrown in along with Rachel at season 6 just feels super shitty. There's no reason why they couldn't have just refilmed this thing on the lot and just threw Angela in for a few scenes midway through the season. Like, it's really yeah.
Also, what's really funny about that is, and thank you, because you helped me remember. Maybe I am a little scatterbrained. Y'all deal with me, but I don't know who's watched the Janet Jackson documentary that we recommended a few weeks ago, but there was another one that came out, I think it was by the New York Times, that talks about how originally in the whole Nipplegate scenario that happened, Justin Timberlake was not even supposed to be part of the show. It was all Black performers, and they were like, someone complained that it was all Black performers, and they threw in this white boy to like appease everyone. And I feel like almost the inverse happened with Angela, where they were like, we don't need this Black person making it a Black show, so we'll keep her out of the opening credits. And then when they were like, well, she's a main character, she has to be in the main credits, they were like, okay, we'll do it, but we're adding another white bitch. So everyone understands this isn't a multicultural show. You're not gonna lose your predominantly white cast.
Yeah.
We will still have the whiteness, but we just needed to have some color in there.
It's not Planet of the Apes, as Joe Rogan would say. It's not.
Not Joe Rogan. Oh, God. It has been a month, you guys.
Jesus Christ. Okay. I know, like, I'm kind of all over the place with this episode too, but I kind of want to talk about the show's stance on college and Cory's whole thing about college. I know we've kind of talked about this before. It seems like the show is kind of acknowledging that there should be another option other than college, and it shouldn't be this, oh, if you don't go to college, your life is ruined thing. But they also completely contradict that at the same time. And I this is just something we've seen kind of over and over again. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on the college stance that was taken.
Yeah, I will say that the episode opens with them opening their acceptance letters. And there's this idea, well, first of all, Cory commits crimes by going in everyone's mailbox. And like, I mean, also that's a very vulnerable moment. Like, to know whether or not you get in, especially if you don't know, that is something that like maybe you don't want to share with everyone. Someone like Shawn, I was like, why would they have Shawn go last? Like, because if everyone else is like, I got in, and you don't know what Shawn, and you know that Shawn is like the biggest risk, why would you save him for last? And why, like, you know, like it's just like, I know it's television, but I'm just like, it's this thing where you put a lot of pressure on people. And I think that as we as a society grow conscious of more of these things and how we stress out teenagers, it's like, it is really important that we remind everyone college isn't for everyone. I was like, Shawn is from a lower class family. How do we even know he can afford to go to college? You know, like there's so many things where it's like, you gotta go. And it's like, well, how are you going to pay for it? And what's your living situation going to be like? And all these other things that come along with it. If you don't have like a major that you want to actually work towards, like you're forcing people to go to college without truly giving them the full picture of what it's like to go to college and the reasons to go to college. And I think that as millennials, we understand the flip side of that, of like just going because you were told to go. And I think that it's really interesting that Shawn, we get a lot of seeds for the future. We get to see Shawn be a photographer and be really good photographer. And there are some other things where I was like, oh, we're getting seeds for the future of like what they want to, where they want to take these characters. And none of those changes are necessarily tied to them going to college.
Yeah. Oh, so I'm so glad you brought up the opening scene, because when I first saw it, I was like, oh, okay, so Shawn maybe wanted his closest friends to be there with him. Maybe he wanted the moral support. I know people like that who were like, hey, I had my parents with me when I opened my college, you know, letters. So I'm thinking it's something that maybe like felt like a good idea, but completely overshadowed by Cory being a shitty friend and making Shawn feel bad for getting on the waiting list. But to your point about like this idea of, can Shawn even afford it, is something I thought about the entire episode. I was like, well, I'm sure he can afford to go to debt to go to college, but I mean, we all did that. Like, it's just, it felt like this thing where no one was asking, you know, the how question, or trying to even help him solve that how question, you know, like not even Feeney was like, hey, let's look into scholarships. Like nothing like that was even discussed.
Yeah, they didn't say, hey, congratulations, you got a full ride. You just got in. And don't get me wrong, this is late 90s, way more affordable than by the time we ended up going. But still, there's this idea, and they didn't even say, like, you know, he'll keep the job that he has as a photographer and then go to school. Like, no, it's just like you're in, and are Cory manipulating it so he can get in without Cory really understanding that everyone's situation isn't his.
Cory and Topanga actively gaslight kids out of going to college, to the point where they tell one kid, hey, don't go to this school. The girls are really promiscuous. They just go from guy to guy. And I was just like, the morals of this show are just so hard to follow sometimes.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the great way of putting it. Like, I'm like, they sent that one kid to Tahiti, which, don't get me wrong, if the kid wanted to go to Tahiti, I'm happy for him. Like, if that's what you wanted to do, that's fine. But the idea of you, again, kind of puppet mastering and manipulating other people's lives. These are their lives.
Or he sent a kid to Afghanistan.
So yeah. So you can do what you want to do. And again, like, you're not even asking Shawn what he wants to do or Topanga what they want to do. You're doing all of this for yourself. And again, it's played for laughs, but it's also like, it's really illustrative of how self-centered Cory is in this moment. And it only gets worse. And I was really, really upset to like just kind of see the implications of his actions.
I get a little disappointed because they, like you made a point earlier of like, they could have worked Shawn's photography into his college plan. He could have said, hey, I'm going to work my way through college and this is how I'm going to pay for it. Like, it could have been such like a good thing to support him with. And then just Cory's reaction left and right. I could just imagine being Shawn, being Topanga, and just feeling so like shitty because you're not living up to these expectations for this person whose life seems seemingly perfect.
Absolutely.
It's like,
and then also like that's another really, really important thing that you just pointed out is we're doing that thing where we rewrite, but I just considered the idea that what they could have done was use the photography to show how Shawn was able to get in on his own merit. Like Cory's doing all these things, but like it turns out that the photographer guy knows someone at Pembroke, and it's like, oh, they have a great program. I can get you in. You know, like it would have been really nice for them to be like, hey, I know Cory's doing all these things, which is great and for its own reasons, but Shawn actually has his own path. Shawn worked to get into college, and that's another thing. Like the idea that when he does get accepted to college, he gets another letter, and they're like, "We're proud to announce that you've joined." Cory immediately is just like, "Oh my God, I did it!" And they're like, "No, Shawn did it." He's like, "Where's Shawn?"
Cory taking credit for Shawn's college acceptance blew my mind. I was like, how big of an ego can this guy have? Like,
well, I'll tell you, because like in the same scene, Topanga's like, "Hey, I applied," which I'm going to come back to this point. I applied to Yale when Cory and I were broken up just to see if I could. And she's talking, and Cory, of course, is just like
ignoring her,
freaking out because Shawn is like, I don't know if I'm still go to Pembroke, even though I got accepted. And she's nervous. And then Angela opens the letter, and it's like, hey, you got on the wait list for Yale, which personally, I was like, oh my God, congratulations. And I don't even know Topanga. I'm like, oh my God, like you got waitlist. Like it's not probably what you had in mind, but that's still a really great thing. And Topanga's like, I'm kind of upset that I didn't get in and I waitlisted. And like, she even says, Cory, I'm feeling really bad. Like she's not like hinting at it. She says the words, Cory, I'm feeling a way about this moment. And his response, oh my God. He goes, what do you have to feel bad about? And she goes, that I didn't get into Yale. And he goes, why would you apply at Yale? Shawn can't go to Yale. You could barely get into Yale. And I was like, you know what? I had to pause.
Yeah.
Because the backhand that would have come across, like I just the fact that anyone was still sitting at that table, it's just ridiculous.
It was just like if Topanga had dumped Cory right then and there, I would have been like, "Yep, makes 100% sense." Like, it was just so embarrassing for Angela and Shawn to be like looking at him like, be better, bro. And he's like, what? What did I say? What did I do? I'm white. What did I do wrong?
Again, I'm sorry. Let's just take a moment to think about what was said. Why would you apply to Yale? Shawn can get into Yale. Again, assuming that he could. Cory's assuming that, oh, if I wanted to, I could. There's that. Then that's not according to my plan. We need to do something that Shawn, your life should revolve around my best friend, not even me, your boyfriend.
Yeah.
You should be making your decisions based on what is best for my best friend and how I want all of us to do it.
Him thinking that she should take his best friend in consideration when applying to college for her is the Caudacity that we're talking about. Like, that is it.
But then to say,
oh, you can barely get in.
It shows that he was listening.
Yeah.
It shows that he was listening because he heard that she didn't get in. But it also is just so telling that he just read in her face. Like, I mean, she said, like, in order for him to say you couldn't even get in, it either means he didn't think that she was capable of getting in from the beginning, or he heard that she didn't get in and was like, bitch, you ain't even getting in. Why are you trying to bring Shawn into this? And the fact that they want us to root for these two after this moment is just like, The math ain't mathing.
The thing that's so infuriating is because it's almost like this episode is telling Cory, no, not everything can go your way. People do take different directions after high school, and you can't control everything, is what we're supposed to walk away with. How the fuck ever, what ends up happening? They all end up going to the same school, living Cory's like ideal situation. So all it did was reward him for it.
Yeah. I mean, and I think there's a little bit of, you know, television show magic, having to have things be the same because it's television. But I also was like, this feels very reflective of the finale. Like, I felt like everything that we were doing, for those who have seen the finale, there are a lot of echoes of what was happening now is in the finale. And I was like, I feel like this was kind of them not knowing if they would get renewed. So they were just kind of like trying to put things in like a bow in case, at which it would have been a great lesson to learn. But you're right, they undermine all of that. And also they kind of write a pass for Cory, who like at the end is just like, oh, well, I learned my lesson, and everyone should just move on from the terrible things that I said, which is, it's really, really upsetting.
His reaction to Topanga when she actually gets accepted, like she comes to his house with the letter, and he immediately is just moping and just being like, he holds the letter up to his head, doing like the old Tonight Show gag, and he's trying to absorb it, and he goes, congratulations, Cory, your life is ruined or something. And it's just making every single thing about him. She can't even enjoy getting into college. She left Yale. She left her parents. He's all she has, and she got into Yale, and she can't even be happy about it. Like, fuck this dude, right?
Well, and I will say, a part of me, and it's again not to blame the victim, we know this is a television show, but I will say that there are people like this, and I think it's really important to note that, like, no, she can be happy. They're choosing to promote Cory's happiness over their own, and these are things that like I encourage no one to do. Like, if you ever get some kind of piece of really good news and someone just makes it all about them, eliminate that person from your life. I don't care if it's your mama, your daddy, your lover, your child. Like, if you get something this great and they're just like, oh, I guess that means my life is over, it's just like, you know what, this wasn't about you, and if you can't be happy for me, then maybe you shouldn't be around me. And that's like this is not to say that Cory can't feel some type of way about everything that's happening. It's the idea that he kind of manipulates everyone else's joy in order to make him like, and so they can understand how they're making him feel.
Yeah, his first reaction is to make people feel guilty for not fulfilling expectations that he didn't thoroughly communicate to begin with. It's super toxic. Ugh.
Absolutely. Also, so I will say
ahead.
something else I wanted to bring up is this idea that Topanga said, I applied to Yale when Cory and I were broken up. And I was like, I understand that that's like a writing workaround, but also that proves that she was curating her future around Cory and Cory alone.
Well,
and
bro,
that is beyond upsetting.
This is I can't even begin to get into Topanga giving up Yale for this fucker. Like, I can't even begin to talk about that without
But you shouldn't,
like,
because we have another episode.
we have another episode. Yeah, I know. But like like the whole idea of her giving up her future for this guy who was so shitty to her for so long. I'm just like, it's so like, there's nothing redeeming to talk about with Cory and Topanga anymore. Like, it's something I don't want people, like, again, it's so interesting because when we started this podcast, I actually went back and listened to our pilot episode the other day, because in Spotify it just like started playing the first one, and we were just talking about like how we learned so much from the show about friendships and relationships, and literally now being into the end of season 5, I'm like, I learned wrong shit from this show, specifically from Cory and Topanga.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of like the journey that we wanted to go on. It was like, oh, wait a minute, maybe the lessons that we learned from this show, I think even like early on in season 1, we realized that maybe the lessons that we learned from this show weren't all good. Maybe they were bad examples. Maybe it was great because we didn't know anything and it imprinted on us, but it didn't really imprint things that were worth repeating. Like the idea that, first of all, they would write a character and they have to do a line like, oh, she applied when they were broken up. Don't worry, you guys. She would never be as disloyal as to apply to a school she qualifies for. Like
she would never try to achieve something more than what Cory could achieve. She's not an independent woman. What do you think? She's crazy? Like,
yeah, exactly.
What are we doing?
The idea that they would even include that line was frustrating to me. But then in the character herself, the idea that she was like, oh, well, I did this while we were broken up. And now I got, I just want to see if I got in. It's like they're making her apologize for pursuing dreams and for being her own person and leaning into her intelligence, an intelligence that we know she has. And the idea that the show wants to make her feel guilty for it is actually really, really frustrating and something that I would never want to teach any female in my life, that you should be building your life around your boyfriend in high school.
Yeah,
or I mean, your husband at 30.
Yeah, and I know that this is kind of like a thing that couples really struggle with in high school when it comes time to pick college. Like I know a bunch of couples who coordinated, their colleges that they applied to when they were in high school, things like that. Like it was a thing that happened, but like as an adult, when you look back on it and you're like, oh, your 17-year-old relationship was more important than pursuing an opportunity. You know what I mean? Like it's really, and that's not to say that like college is more important than a relationship. I'm saying any experience that's true and authentically you that you give up for another person is the issue. It's not that college should reign above everything.
Well, I would say the exact same thing is for Shawn.
Yeah.
Like the fact that Shawn kind of shows a like I wrote early on in my notes that when they're in the dark room, Cory's upset because Shawn's not listening to him. But he's not listening to Shawn. Like Shawn's like, hey, I'm kind of like really attracted to this. I'm doing really well here. It could turn into something. We hear later that he has an opportunity for it to actually grow. And we hear his boss say that he's really good at his job. So the idea that Shawn would give up this opportunity just because Cory, like again, like Shawn doesn't have money. Shawn, and he actually makes a very strong case for, hey, I don't care about school and I'm not excited by school the way that I am about this job. Yeah. That's something to say. And it's like, I would love, of course they would have never done this, but like I would have loved the idea of Shawn not going to college and him taking this job and then actually doing that thing. Maybe they feel like they did it with Eric, but like we've repeated storylines before of like being like, hey, actually I can do better if I actually go to school and pursue my dreams. Or I'm really good at photography and I would like to get more into it, but I don't know the basics. So I'm going to go to college so I can learn that and then, like elevate myself. There are just several ways that they could have done this. And I feel like they, at the end of the day, as you said, they teased all of these reasons, but then they copped out and were like, we got to do what we got to do for television.
Yeah, because to your point, there is a reality where gaining real world experience does make more sense than preparing for another 4 years or 10 years for a career. You know what I mean? Like it just, sometimes being a photographer, you just have to be a photographer. And it just would have been really nice to show that. Now that we're talking about him being a photographer, can we talk about Jack a little bit in this episode?
I literally wrote that this is the beginning of Jack being the vain, good-looking.
I wrote that too. Introduction to vain Jack is what I had in my notes. Exactly, bro. Oh my god.
Exactly. Well, like what they do in this episode is we get a lot of like the seeds, as I said earlier. We get like Shawn wanting to be a photographer, which eventually will turn into wanting to be a journalist or like all this other stuff. Then we get Eric is like exceptionally dumb in this episode, and like we're starting to turn towards our
He's dumb
Dumber.
sometimes. Sometimes he's wise older brother. It's so weird how he's both in this episode.
Well, I mean, because like again, it's like the idiot savant thing where it's like, you know, sometimes he's very perceptive, and I will always go back to Eric has a different form of intelligence, and I think that that's what they constantly want to show. But like the Duckies thing, you're like, it's funny, and Will Friedle does a great job in it, but it also. It's like, okay, we're starting to see who they want these characters to be. I feel like I don't know how, I don't know when someone was like, Matthew Lawrence is very attractive. We should really play that up. And this was like I will say it was a natural way of introducing this kind of element for him. And he took to it really well, and it actually made sense. So I will give them that.
When Jack is like, being like, why am I going to college to try to get girls who I can get right now? And he just got super into it, and Cory had to like pull him away. It gave me the same vibes of Eric being rejected from the cult because he's too into the hugs. It just kind of gave me a similar a vibe as that.
What I wanted to talk about with that scene is, again, just talking about how terrible Cory is in this episode. The idea that he would use Shawn's estranged brother, who has known him for, let's say, a year, to pressure him as if Jack has any authority to tell Shawn what to do in his life.
As if Shawn gives a shit about what
Exactly.
Jack says.
Yeah. That was like a thing where I was just like, this is, again, Caudacity. Like the idea that you're like, you're going to tell him what to do and all this other stuff. And then Jack being like, I'm the older brother, so you have to listen to me. And I just feel like I would have loved Shawn to be like, get the fuck out of here. Like, what are you doing?
Hey, here's something I don't know if you picked up on. Did you notice that the studio was just the boys' apartment with no furniture? Or
I did not, but you're always good with that. You're always good with that.
Yeah.
You know what I got? Like, this is the 90s, and they had like that setup that they always have whenever there's a photo shoot, and it reminded me of the Smart Guy special episode.
I thought the same thing.
Where there's like that guy who's taking photos of the kids in the basement.
Now get in your bathing suits.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I saw. I was like, this is kind of sketch, but it's also the 90s, and apparently a lot of people went into a lot of basements and took their clothes off and had photography. So
I don't have a ton to say about this. I just want to say that I fucking hate the Amy and Alan wallpaper thing. It's just like, it's tired. It's a trope. I really don't have much else to say about it other than roll my
agree,
eyes.
especially since Topanga walks in and she's just like, ooh, wallpaper. And it was just like, the women love wallpaper. And it's just, and men don't really see an importance of it. And it's tiring. Like there's so many more things we can do with a woman of Amy's age and having a child when you think that you're about to have an empty nest. Like there are storylines we could be doing right now.
Yeah.
And we could show Alan and Cory going through the parallels of things changing. We could have a moment where Alan is actually being like, hey, I wasn't expecting these changes, but sometimes change can be positive. Like there are opportunities here, and we go with none of them.
There could have been a really nice moment with Topanga and Amy too, in a way where there's some conversations about Yale without it being so aggressive like they are later on between the two of them.
I'm sorry, that would involve two female characters talking for a long period of time.
Wow.
And I don't think we can do that.
You're right.
I think it goes against the show guidelines.
I do want to say I did enjoy the redecorate joke. I know it's
I love that joke. I love that joke. Like it's a perfect dad joke. B, it was a perfectly placed dad joke, and it was just like a really good button on that scene.
Morgan reappears in this episode. That's something, I guess. She's still
they
around. Remembered her. But what they did not remember is to provide her a wardrobe, because I'm pretty certain that Cory takes Morgan to Chubby's in her pajamas.
Well, so what's interesting about the scene with God, I forgot her name. Morgan. Could we see her so infrequently?
She plays the younger sister on the series.
But the thing that they did with Morgan that was interesting is you have Cory spiraling about everything changing, and he goes to Morgan and he's like, you're not gonna do all these things, right? And it's like, she's like, no, I'm a kid. And it's like, yeah, but you know what happens with kids? They grow up, they change. Like the idea, matter of fact, she did change from a different actress earlier on. So like, this idea that they would use Morgan as like his anchor and then not in some way comment on the fact that change is part of growing up. And like, I think that like Morgan actually would have been a good example. Like Cory spending time with Morgan and Morgan being like, yeah, I don't want to change either. I don't want to do these things. And Cory getting to be the older brother and then realizing himself that, wait a minute, change can be good, change can be positive, would have been another really good moment. But I mean, then we wouldn't have probably gotten the, what is it called? Peg Leg Pete's reveal. And that, I will say, the waitress in that scene, hilarious.
Maria,
I thought she did really good.
I love that Chubby sometimes has servers and sometimes doesn't. Real quick, I just want to talk about the moment with Morgan and Cory in the backyard, because I hated that damn scene. It was literally Cory just being like, complaining about all of these good things happening to the people in his life and basically begging his sister not to pursue interests that conflict with his own, and her just being like, yeah, sure, and him just being like, what did he say? God bless you. Oh, it's so weird when they bring God into this damn show. It's like, it's the weirdest moments. But I will say, I love that they used this episode as the episode to kill Chubbies. I think it makes perfect sense to be like, hey, we are legit at the end of an era. This is the last appearance of this restaurant that we've seen all 5 seasons. Like, it's one of the most consistent sets that we've had in the show. And like, for them to be like, no, this is gone, really just let you know this is a different and going to be a different show going forward.
I love that you said that, because I forgot that it was in all 5 seasons, but I will say that it did feel like, oh, things are changing. Things don't stay the same. Even if you do, things don't. The world moves around you. Chubby gets to go to Wyoming, and it sounds like he gets a happy ending. So it's like,
I loved that Chubby, like, they were like, oh, he moved to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and Cory's like, wait, what? Hold on. Like that glitch in the Matrix moment. Like, wait a second. That doesn't make sense.
What's going on in Jackson?
Oh my gosh. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, but then also, I also thought that it kind of fell in line, because in my opinion, Cory, they absolutely had signs of the buyout. And like, they announced this. There were decorations all around the place, but he's so self-centered, he didn't even notice.
This motherfucker doesn't pay attention to anything other than himself.
The world literally changed around him, which I thought was very telling.
Can we talk about Feeney's retirement a little bit?
Yeah, I think this is time to talk about Feeney's retirement.
I mean, if we're talking about the Jackson Hole thing, I guess, you know what? I really wish, to your point, that some of the things that they talked about in this series kind of come to fruition, like Shawn kind of doing photography full-time instead of going to college, and also just like letting Feeney retire. Like, no disrespect, I know William Daniels does bring a lot to season 6 and 7, but just thinking about his story arc, it feels like this is such a proper send-off for him, and I kind of wish they would have just like were brave enough to pursue the show with something else. I don't know.
Well, I will say that they actually wrote it perfectly, because what Feeney says is the school board offered me early retirement. So it's not that he was like, hey, I'm kind of done with teaching. It's like, no, the school board in this particular high school was like, hey, here's an out, take it. And that does open the window for him to play his role in the future, which is very interesting. I agree with you that it would have been nice. Like, Cory goes, who are you if you're not teaching? And it's like, well, no, let's find out. Let's find out who George, the next door neighbor, is. And I think that what happens very often, again, because it's television, is there's no room for George. There's no room. But it would have been great with us talking about all of this change for everyone to have to actually find new roles in ways that they balance in each other's lives.
Because honestly, like, once George starts like being their college professor, it really does get that feeling of like, damn, how many times can Sidney Prescott survive?
Yeah.
Like how long can the teacher follow a particular group of kids before it just starts getting weird and it doesn't make sense anymore?
Absolutely.
Like the fact that he's been their teacher since they were in grade school, like it's weird at this point. Like I know they tie it in, but that kind of goes into a lot of the issues that 6 and 7 fall into, season 6 and 7, is that they try to make these things make sense for why they should keep going when it really, there's some things that just need it to stay in the 5th season.
Exactly. And I think that there's some ways where it's like you need to challenge yourself and figure out, how do you, as writers and as creators, how do you make this make sense in the world without like repeating yourself? Like, because Feeney doesn't move away. He is still there for the kids. And I think that if you wanted him to be like this teacher figure or grandfather figure or whatever, you could still do so. That doesn't require him being their teacher, but just their friend or their mentor.
Okay, so I know we're probably going to talk about this a little bit more in the next few episodes, but how do you feel in general when shows do college years?
So I'm interested to revisit the college years of Boy Meets World, because I remember it being some of my favorite or more memorable ones. And I think that's because we get more of Angela and we get Rachel. And so there are things that we're doing there. We get underpants. And so there are moments that I really, really enjoy. But also I will say that I mentioned on the show earlier that we were watching Gossip Girl. And it's funny how quickly the college part falls away. And I think that college is so different than high school, because high school, you're required to take the same classes. You're required to be in there's some consistency to high school. But college just is a little inconsistent. People have different schedules, they do different things, they have different pursuits, they don't always get into the same college. And so the idea that we're all here voluntarily just becomes harder. And I think that it makes shows suffer, because how much are you going to be in the real world and how much are you going to live in the sitcom world?
Yeah, I've seen a few shows attempt to go from high school to college. Saved by the Bell is one that comes to mind. I also think about more dramas like, 90210 or Dawson's Creek or any of those other kind of teen shows at the time. And as much as I know that there's a lot of room for interesting stories, I do have to say that I never felt that a show's strongest seasons were their college years.
I can't think of any, unless it was in the premise. Again, A Different World, we're set in college. So
yeah, it's a different show. That's a spinoff. Yeah, that's, even Grownish, I don't count that. But I always thought that Boy Meets World was kind of the one I favored more than the others. There is a part of me that kind of wonders, and I could be wrong, I think it's One Tree Hill, where at the end of high school, they just do a time jump. They just completely fucking skip college. And it's all right, now they're out and they're living their lives. And
guess what? That makes way more sense.
it kind of works. And something like that could have been just really interesting too, instead of trying to force, all these people to kind of be together still in college, to kind of accept that maybe they've drifted apart and for whatever reason they have to come back. That would have been interesting to watch. I know we're going to talk about the whole college thing more as we go through. I just wanted initial impressions of it.
I do want to say, just because we were talking about Feeney right before this, I do enjoy Eric and Feeney as always. And the idea of Eric being things change, you have to get over it. And then Cory being Feeney retired, and Eric literally losing his mind. It's funny, but what I really love is the epilogue we get, where Eric A is confused about what goes on there. But B, he goes, if I'm really, really quiet, will you stay? And
doesn't your heart just break for him?
And you're absolutely just what's funny is they don't even have Feeney say anything, because what do you say after that? Eric is 5 years old again, and
I instantly have so much more empathy for him than I ever did for Cory in this entire damn episode.
Absolutely. And it's also, to me, I was if you told me that Feeny went back into teaching because of that moment, I would believe you. Because how do you leave someone who says that to you, who you have known their entire life? Like when he said that, I was like, you know what? Yeah, go on for another 4 years or whatever. Because how do you turn that down?
Yeah, it's a really sweet moment, and there are moments in the future episodes where Eric's feelings about Feeny can get a little cartoonish, but it was just such a nice and sincere moment where like there was nothing for Feeny to say. He instantly understood that like Eric felt like Feeny was leaving because of him for some reason, and I'm sure Eric often feels like people feel weird around him. And so like it was just he found that one person that he could rely on, that he could understood the way his brain works, how smart he is. And like the idea of giving that up was a little too much for him. And it just really made me like, oh.
Yeah. I think I'm pretty sure we've mentioned this before, but like just the dynamic between Eric and Feeny is just such a well-written one, and the chemistry is there. And I think of like Feeny when he went to Boston and Eric was there. It's just like there's not only a mentorship, there's a true friendship there, and it's one that makes so much sense, and one that really like, again, it's a testament to William Daniels acting that we all feel that way. But I think it's his connection with Eric that best illustrates why we all kind of hold on to Feeny, because it really is his love of this kid. Like, of course he loves like Topanga and Cory and all of them, but I feel like it's almost always sternness and grandfatherly. But with Eric, it's a true friendship.
Yeah, he kind of like got past the wall of student for Feeny in a way where he kind of sees him more of a nephew almost, it seems like. There is one scene where Cory's like, he's talking to Feeny, he's like, why can't you ever just say what you mean? And I've always kind of loved that Feeny teaches lessons without just outright telling people things. Like, I know at one point he actually tells Cory, like, change feels right, and there's all that all going theme of how change can be good, but I just thought it's interesting how they're starting to really, and we saw this in the Inuit episode, where they're questioning why Feeny can't just be more direct and why he can't just tell him the way it is. And Feeny, of course, knowing that life doesn't always give you direct answers and that you have to work through the vagueness of it.
Well, that, and then also I would argue that, because I was telling a friend this earlier, if you tell someone what to do, then you will forever be the person who told them what to do.
Yeah.
But if you can get them to come to the conclusion on their own, then it's not something that you've told them to do. It's something that they are able to logically understand, and they're able to do a time and time again. And I think that Feeny understands that if I give you the answer, I could give you the answer, but that's not what this is about. This is about you being able, as a teacher, I want you to be able to learn on your own.
Yeah. Feeny.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about this episode?
Not really. The only thing is that I thought it was funny that Eric kind of rewrote his own history in this episode, where he's like, I took a year off after high school, and then Morgan's like, you didn't get into college. He's like, yeah. But I just love this idea that he's in college now, just being like, I just took a year off, I did some traveling, really owning it as his own decision.
We all adjust history to favor ourselves, and I think that was really true to life.
yeah But yeah, that's all I got.
Bruh moment. I mean, there are several, but do you have one?
Cory's entire reaction to Shawn and Topanga, but mostly Topanga. This, like, you could hardly get into Yale. Just dump them right there. Like, it's fine.
Absolutely.
Like, you're gonna get Yale guys. Like, he's Cory Matthews. It'll be fine. You'll live.
Yeah. I agree. Like, kind of like playing off of that, I would say just the idea that they wanted to preface it with, I only did this because we were broken up. I was like, this is really disrespectful to Topanga's intelligence, to be honest.
When Cory and Topanga broke up, Topanga applied for Yale. Cory stuck his face in another woman's jacket. So like this is the direction that these two took when they had time off from the relationship, and who is being rewarded.
Exactly. Feeny, taught me. What's the lesson of this episode?
You know what? I think there's a lot of lessons that they're trying to get across. I think in one hand, they're trying to say, hey, Cory, if you can't be happy for your friends, like you're not a good friend, which is a lesson that we've already learned. We learned that during the work study episode where Shawn was getting promoted and Cory was, in the mailroom. He couldn't be happy for his friends. He couldn't celebrate their victories. He was like, oh, that's shitty. I'll do better. Guess what? He hasn't learned to do better. I think the actual lesson that they're trying to say is that it's not the changes that matter, it's how you react to them, which Eric says very eloquently. And I think that's the Feeny lesson for this episode.
I'm smiling so hard because those were literally the two things that I wrote down. And you said it so perfectly. So yeah, I love it. There's a line.
Yeah.
How great are you giving this episode?
If for nothing else, then it kind of like ending an era of what seasons 1 through 5 was, and kind of getting us ready for the end of the season, which really does feel like they're prepping for a series finale. Like you said, like they didn't know if they were going to get renewed or not. I think I'm going to give it like a B+. I don't think I really enjoyed this episode. I don't think I would want to rewatch it, but I do think it lays some pretty interesting groundwork for, Shawn's whole photography storyline, like the fact that they actually stick with it. It's not like, Cory's film career, which they just kind of bring up whenever they want to and not, actualize. Shawn actually pursues photography. So this is kind of one of those things where this episode, I think, means more in the canon than it did for me as a viewing it and enjoying it. So
I love that you said that. I was gonna give it, and I honestly there was no real reason. It just felt like a B- episode to me. But I will say this: when I look at the writing and I think of like all the characters, even our extras are doing really good work. Like I don't think we talked about the different guys who were there. I had them written in my roll call. I apologize that I didn't remember to bring you up, but I think everyone's doing their job and everyone plays it really well. And even though the storyline could be better, they kind of do bring it all together. So I'm gonna say just solid B. Like I think like it deserves a B in my opinion. So yeah,
about right.
Homework. What homework do you have?
All right. Well, my homework is not to go watch Moonfall. My homework is to check out a show on Apple TV called The After Party. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I've heard about it, and I'm really excited. So if you're endorsing it.
Yeah, it has a really great cast. Dave Franco, Tiffany Haddish, Sam Richardson, Alana Glazer, Ben Schwartz. It's a really great premise of that Dave Franco plays this pop star who goes back to his high school reunion, and there's an after party where he dies. And the whole
Why would you
series...
tell me Dave Franco dies? I love Dave Franco.
No. It's like it's part of the story of it. But the whole thing is it's a who's done it of who was at the after party. And what's so interesting and something that I think you'll actually love is that every episode is Detective Tiffany Haddish interviewing one of the people and them telling their story, but every single person's story is like a different genre of movie. So Sam Richardson, the first episode, it's a rom-com, and then the second episode with Ben Schwartz is like a Hamilton musical, and Alana Glazer has like a horror movie, and like every episode is a different genre because every person's movie and their perception of what happened is all different in a way that like I know you would love. And it's a whodunit, so I know you love that. And the cast is really great. And yeah, I highly recommend it.
I saw the trailer for it and I was like already on board. Your endorsement means it is definitely moving up on the list. So yeah, and also I will say that I feel like we're doing some really interesting things with television right now. Like I feel like we've done our anti-hero phase. We've done our like character explorations, and I think right now we really are kind of exploring perception and the different ways that we can tell stories.
Totally.
And I'm just really excited. I think we're getting a lot of really, really good television. So yeah,
highly recommend it. How about yourself, Ceej?
My homework, in a very similar way, is this show called Dollface on Hulu. It is hilarious. Very, very much like you said, it's stacked with a cast. It's stars Kat Denning, Shay
Yes, I
Mitchell,
know what you're talking
Brenda
about.
Song. It's a really, really good. I think a while ago I had mentioned this show called Man Seeking Woman, which was on FX.
Yes.
And no lie, this is Man Seeking Woman was a show centered around a guy. Dollface is centered around Kat Denning's character, and it just takes kind of like the same approach in exploring female dynamics in the world. It's very, very interesting. The whole premise of the episode or of the show is that Kat Denning's character gets broken up with, and she has to kind of like join the girl world again because she's been out of it so long. And it's just really funny how they illustrate the different ways. Like, for example, when she is dumped, she gets on this bus that just takes you to Girls Town. And so you can reunite with your friends, and then she gets off the bus, and there's a bunch of people reuniting with their friends, and they're just like have signs that like, we missed you, like everything that you would see like at like the airport. And then it's like you need to pick up your emotional baggage on the way out. Like, it's a lot of like literalizing the experiences that we have, but really fun writing. Shay Mitchell is an amazing actress. She's so funny, and she really, in my opinion, she really has like found her lane of like being hilarious but also really hot. And then Brenda Song is also giving you like really good energy, and she understands her character as well. And you just get like all these veterans, like the guest stars that they have and that come in and out. Macaulay Culkin shows up for like one episode, and it just like his role makes sense, and you get a lot of like senior TV actors who are just really down to have a good time. So yeah.
You know what? I'm so glad that you endorsed this show again, because I was a fan of Man Seeking Woman, and I did get, when I saw the vibe, when I saw Dollface, I was like, wow, this seems like a retelling of that could be really interesting. Also, Macaulay Culkin and Brenda Song are a couple, so
Yeah, they
that
actually live in my
completely makes
neighborhood.
sense.
Yeah,
They what?
they live in my neighborhood.
Macaulay Culkin lives in your neighborhood.
Yeah. I found that out actually during the pandemic, actually. So yeah.
How did you see him just walking around, just being
So
Macaulay
yeah,
Culkin?
I mean, this complete tangent we can talk about, but basically, long story short, we were at the grocery store. This is like peak pandemic, and so everyone like was doing their own shopping and everything there. And we were at the grocery store, and I see Brenda Song behind me, and I'm like, is that Brenda Song? And then I turned the corner, and I'm like, yo, is that Macaulay Culkin? If that's Brenda Song, that's definitely Macaulay Culkin. So,
With mask on, you recognize them?
yeah, like it was just one of those things where it's like, you know, like sometimes you just see people and you like, I would know you anywhere. And sure enough, I just like, I knew, I was like, for no real reason other than a gut feeling, I was like, that is Macaulay Culkin. And then when I saw him and Brenda Song, I was like, nope, definitely Macaulay Culkin. And yeah.
Wow, to be in the grocery store with Richie Rich himself, the lead singer of Pizza Underground.
I'm actually, yeah, I'm like, I've seen him at Pizza Underground as well. So yeah, a very interesting life I've lived. Okay, we will leave you guys with that. Thank you guys for listening to Bromance World. Remember, you can find us on all the places, Spotify, Stitcher. Please leave us a rating. I love it when it's high. We love to hear from you guys. We want to hear from you guys. Continue to reach out to us at Bromance World, or email us at bromancesworld@gmail.com. And yeah, anything else?
No, yeah, just, share with your friends. We are on all the platforms as well as YouTube, where you can watch video versions of our podcast.
Hey. Okay, you guys, I think it's time to remember to dream,
to try,
and do good.
Do good. And quick reminder for anyone who wants to hang around, I will make sure to put our conversation of the movie Moonfall, our review of it, at the end of this. So if you guys would like to hear that, keep on listening. But if not, we will see you next time.
So instead of saying later, I'm gonna say, listen, bro.
Listen, bruh. Later, guys.
When this boy meets world.
I had like a list of things I wanted to talk to you about Moonfall, and I have since forgot.
Oh
all of
my
it
God.
because it's all meaningless in my brain.
Because it was
do not
like, honestly, I was
prioritize this.
like, I can't. You're right. I don't even remember how I felt about it because my mind was like, take this, throw it away.
Delete.
like that movie made. I was like, they aren't even trying to make sense. Not even trying. Like, I feel like I was like, this movie was made for China. It was like purely like, I was like, there's Chinese writing out of nowhere, there's a Chinese character out of nowhere, like it was just made for China, which is fine, I don't care, but don't tell me that you made a movie for me. Like, it's like they did a US box office so they could say that they did a US box office, and then it was shipping directly to China, which is okay. They didn't have story structure. Things happened out of nowhere for no reason. You have a teenager who's driving the car, even though there are a teenager with a permit driving everyone else, even though there are two full grown ass adults with driver's license who are just like, I guess the kid's driving. I don't know. So, like,
You have a scene where a white man yells at a judge multiple times and nothing happens.
Again, I don't even remember that. I don't even remember it.
Oh, you don't remember when Patrick Wilson demands that his son get special treatment because the drugs in his car belong to his friend and not him?
And again, it's one of those things where it's like, sure, why not? Like, I was like, yeah.
I didn't know that, like, when we got Independence Day, it was basically all of us telling Roland Emmerich that we wanted him to make shittier versions of this every decade for the end of time. Like,
we didn't. That's what he got from our love of Independence Day.
It's terrible. It's the same movie over and over and over again, just shittier versions of it. It's a copy of a copy of a copy.
It's not the same, because Independence Day made sense and it had a thread and characters that interacted with each other in a very understandable way. This had none of that.
Yeah, this is like the fourth Michael Keaton.
You know what I mean? Oh yeah, you know what? Yeah. I forgot this. Now I'm remembering that I was like, they were like, what is science? I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean.
Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the
Oxygen
janitor
level's
can know
low.
more
Okay.
than NASA's top scientists.
Yeah, the oxygen level's low. Okay, 5 seconds later, everybody outside would know. Are y'all not cold? Is it not frigid?
Yeah.
Like, are y'all not in the mountains? Like, I don't like. Again, science doesn't matter, which I'm okay with. But
the one thing that really bothered me, and I promise we'll get into this episode, there's a part where they're going into the moon, and fuck them for making me say that sentence. They're going into the moon and they're like, hey, we have to turn off our electronics because it's like attracted to electronics. But like sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's buttons on and things dinging and they're moving thrusters and nothing's happening. And I'm just like, so you decided just nothing matters.
Yeah. Again, that's the thing. I was like, oh, you decided nothing matters. It's fine. Like, you're pretty much, again, I take things as they are delivered to me. And I was very much like, oh, science doesn't, like, physics aren't a thing. Okay, cool. And then so what happened, I was like, physics aren't a thing. Why would I be upset? You've already told me physics don't matter. So
there's one thing that I just have to mention, which is like this guy like tries to pull like a Bruce Willis sacrifices life thing for Earth, but the moon, without his consent, scans his subconscious and transports it. So he's now one with the moon. His subconscious is part of the moon for eternity. What a terrifying existence.
Why?
Oh, why? Yeah, why? Of course, why? We're past why.
Why was he there? They literally do something along the lines of everyone else has left for the day. Only the three of us, not trained astronauts, can go into space. And I was like, I feel like this isn't something Joe off the street could do. Like, I don't know. I could be wrong. But it just feels wrong. And then they go into space. They go to the moon. It turns out all those Reddit threads were true. And I was like, this just feels like a jerk off session for like all those Reddit guys who were like, see, I was right. And I was like, but you're not. None of this makes sense.
None of this makes sense. Also, I love that like the moon is so close to Earth that there's no way that anyone is surviving on this planet. Like there's too much Like, there's going to be a redo on Mankind.
We saved the world. And I was like, what did you save?
What did you save?
Life on this planet now?
When you understand how just like, you know, our oceans affect everything, like there's no way that everyone isn't going to be fucking dead in some kind of winter, you know.
Let's just talk about the damage done where we're at. Like, again, it's just like
the Chrysler building went from New York to Colorado. Do you know how long that trip is?
Do you know how many lives? Like, you guys didn't save shit.
You didn't save anything. Everything is destroyed. Everything.
And again, here's the thing. I'm always, I'm someone who, like, the earth is going to be just fine without us. I don't need to be here. But it's the audacity of saying a sentence like, you saved shit. Nah.
I love when they get back from the moon and they literally like drop like 10 feet onto a mountain in Colorado. Like the moon's that close to Earth.
Oh, the same
a drop
area where everyone else happens to be.
Oh, yeah. They're like, oh, our kids are right here. By the way, they have been walking through the Colorado wilderness while chunks of the moon are falling down, raining
with finger gloves. Finger gloves.
Oh my God.
I was like, yeah, sure. Okay.
There's a scene where like the tides are like rising to like outrageous levels. They're in LA and they're like on the first floor of Ramada Inn, right? And like the tidal waves are literally crashing over buildings and they're like, oh, let's just go up to the third floor. We'll be fine. How will you be fine?
Because physics don't matter. There were like, I was high going into it. And even my high brain was like, this don't make sense. I
was like, oh, I'm on this ride now. Wherever it takes me.
Thank you. Yeah. I was just like,
I was expecting 2012 level wolves to show up at one point. Like,
no, because again, that would acknowledge science and the fact that there are wildlife and they didn't have time for any of that.
Wow.
You take your science and you send it to the moon, where the space aliens are actually just previous generations of us. And I'm like, y'all decided to do this again? Like,
yeah,
where it was
the
going.
whole like, explanation for moons was so like, why is this so fucking complicated? There's just so many just dumps of just information. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't follow it.
Give me 1 second. I just want to do something real quick. You were like, I couldn't follow it. And again, there were just moments where I'm like, I don't think I'm supposed to be following it. And okay.
There's also, can we just talk about real fast how no one gives a shit about this little black boy in the movie that
oh, not at all. Not in the slightest.
Not even, oh, we're just gonna leave him with the babysitter who's gonna leave him with the stranger so she can go rescue this other kid. Like, what are guys, why is the child in this?
Yep. His dad did his dad die? I can't remember.
He should have, because he was in the top level security office and then pulled a gun on his commanding officer. In what country are you in that this guy survives?
You're a black man?
It's like he could have had Skittles and things could have went south. He pulled a gun out. Oh my God.
I want a parody of this movie, because I feel like a parody of this movie would make more sense than this movie.
I thought this movie was a parody.
No, like again, like the parodies have to make sense.
Man.
Yeah, again, I just was like, okay, you know what? We all do things for a paycheck. Whatever.
I guess so. I was like, the whole time I was like, Halle Berry, from losing Isaiah to this, like, what are you doing? Was Catwoman really that damaging? Like, jeez.
Here's the thing. I'm not gonna lie. Halle Berry has never really been an actress, and the only reason why she got it was because she let Billy Bob Thornton. And white people, they love to see a struggling black person who will also let an ugly white person get on top of them. That was it. They were like, yeah, Oscar go. You made me believe that Billy Bob Thornton was fuckable.
Yeah.
When the spawn meets world.